For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Patrick Geary, and I am an intuitive astrologer and celestial channel. And welcome today to our Scorpio season forecast, by which I mean the astrological weather for the 30 days in which the sun is going to be sitting in this divine stillness of the zodiac's only fixed water sign. I want to say before we begin that I am recording this in one take and fresh. That is the way that I work best. So please bear with me through any pauses or points of clarification as the information comes through me to you. So let's hop in. I'm going to pull up a chart here, and I'm going to pull up the ingress chart, by which I mean the moment that the sun enters Scorpio. And you'll see that this year, that is October 23rd, Thursday, at 4:50 a.m. here in London. I'll highlight for you the sun down here at 0 degrees and 0 minutes of Scorpio. This year, as the sun enters Scorpio, we're also looking at the moon in Scorpio just after a new moon. Mars in Scorpio is completing about two-thirds of the way through its journey through Scorpio. And we've got Mercury also preparing to leave Scorpio before it comes back later in the month, retrograde. Also noticing that the sun is here in a square with Pluto. We'll talk more about that in just a few moments. I just want to mention this here, as this ingress chart really does set the energy for the fullness of the month. It's the moment when the sun opens the door to the room. It's that first impression that we get. So it's a lasting hit. And even though these planets will all move over the course of the month and we'll track them, we'll see what opportunities emerge as they do. I just want to sit here with this moment and understand a little bit more about it, as it is really a valid impression about what awaits. So, when we see the moon, Mercury, and Mars all sitting here in Scorpio, this has a real signature for needing to speak the truth, needing to speak truth that has been buried, truth that has been hidden, truth that has been obscured in some way, needing to speak it, needing to bring it into the light, needing to be an advocate for it. And by the truth, I mean that's been buried. What I mean more than anything is your own internal truth. Things you have known, things that you have felt, things that have been present with you, but for whatever reason, you haven't been able to give a voice to them. Now is a time to advocate for them, to draw them up, to draw them out, to bring them into the world, to reveal them to yourself. And remembering that as you reveal your truth, you're also revealing your part of the truth that we all share, that we all hold together. And you're helping other people to do the same. So, being an advocate for the truth being revealed is a wonderful imprint to take with us over the course of the month. Even if we might face some challenges, we might face some self doubt, especially with that Sun square Pluto in Aquarius. We might feel like we don't have the power or the capacity to be able to do it. So it can have that need to reach further down to find the courage that lays below whatever doubts we may be experiencing. I also asked for an energy image to accompany this, and I got the image you see behind me. It was an image of handcuffs. First, it was just these hard metal handcuffs, and I thought, well, how on earth can this be related to getting more into the truth? And then as I looked closer, I realized that these handcuffs were made of this golden divine light. And the feeling I got was one of trust, one of divine surrender. So, questions around who are you trusting? Are you trusting the system? Are you trusting something somebody else said to you? Or are you trusting your own internal knowing? And even within yourself, what part of you are trusting? Are you trusting your ego? Are you trusting your emotions? Or are you trusting this deeper knowing that sits within you? And I think that's why I got this image of handcuffs, because if you think about handcuffs, it's not possible to resist when we have ourselves in handcuffs. It is this moment of surrender, of vulnerability. And if we think about this as trusting in the divine, trusting in the greater plan, trusting in our universe, suddenly it feels very different. It's almost like I'm going to take myself out of the way. I don't know everything that there is here in this bigger picture, but what I do know is that I'm here and I trust you and I believe. I also think it's really interesting that when I put up this image as my background, that you see my head breaking the chain. So in that trust, I see now that there is liberation. So we know the truth sets us free. keep that in mind as we move through this discussion. And I'll also put these dates and transits down below. You're welcome, of course, to take notes, to record them in your mind, and you'll have them down below if you want to follow along as the month unfolds. So on October 24th, that day after the sun ingresses or enters Scorpio, we have our first big aspect, and this is the sun squaring Pluto in Aquarius. And here again, I mentioned we can find issues around self doubt. The sun very much brings our sense of confidence. It's our sense of identity. It's our brilliance. And Pluto can ask us deep questions on where are we afraid to be brilliant? Where are we afraid to shine? Where are we afraid to exude this natural confidence to which we are entitled? And it wants us to look below that fear, to find courage, a wonderful Scorpio word, to sit with the fear until it evaporates, until we see that it doesn't need to constrain us, it doesn't need to hold us back, that below that fear is truth. And we can always ground ourselves in that deeper truth. And the truth is that you are powerful. You have the power to do anything. You are part of this creator being that lives within all of us. So the only limitations on you and what's possible for you are those that you agree to. So there really is an opportunity here to stand in your own power. And that can sometimes mean that we feel a little bit of doubt. So embrace that doubt, embrace that fear as a reminder that you are courageous and that you have all that it takes to live in line with your own personal truth. Then, a few days later, on October 29th, we will have the first quarter moon, that sun squaring the moon in Capricorn. And here we're getting some wonderful questions around achievement with that Capricorn moon. So, where are we going to funnel our truth into something tangible and practical that we can see in the world around us? What is the legacy of our truth? What goals would we want to set from this place of deeper knowing? And I think there's also here a question around our motivation. What is our motivation for achieving? Is it that we want to enjoy the fullness of our expression? And we want to bring joy to the world and we want to bring joy to our soul? Or is there some external metric that we've been measuring ourselves by? So maybe also giving ourselves permission to choose those goals that really help our soul sing. And you know your soul is singing if you're in a state of excitement, if you're in a state of passion. So really letting that internal, deeply felt excitement and passion, maybe even things that you feel so excited about, you can't even explain them. Things that feel like they come out of left field, things that feel like they're just sort of bubbling up from inside you. And this is really also an invitation to go into that stillness, that beautiful Scorpio stillness, and let those things come up from inside you and emerge out into the field around you so that they can be created. We also see that day Mercury moving into Sagittarius onto greener storytelling pastures, and will come back into Scorpio in retrograde a few weeks later. Then on November 4th, we see Mars moving into Sagittarius. And this is a significant movement because Mars is, in traditional terms, the ruler of Scorpio. So with Mars in Scorpio at that Scorpio ingress point, it really makes the sun's Scorpio energy even more Scorpio. The sun's looking to Mars. Mars is also sitting in Scorpio. So it is a doubling down of this Scorpio energy. There's a real purity to that Scorpio expression in this earlier part of the month. And that Scorpio vibe, again, it is very internally oriented. It is really about our own motivation, it's about our own truth, and it's how we are bringing that into the world through our brilliant, precise insight. And with Mars moving into Sagittarius, this has more a feeling of collective truth, universal truth, of galloping off into the sunset, having these wonderful experiences that draw us closer to the divine. So this moves that outward expression a little bit more to the forefront here. And you might notice an uptick in that energy, and it might feel like it goes from this to this as we go from that fixed water to the mutable fire, which is very much a flexible, inspired, passionate energy. So this could also be a nice activation from what I mentioned around feeling that passion on the inside, letting that guide your goals. Here now we're getting Mars, well, saying, hey, start on this quest. Let's get it going. And then the day after, on November 5th, we will be enjoying a full moon in Taurus. So, from the sun's perspective here in Scorpio, Scorpio often sits in a place of discomfort. It is the stretch zone, the growth zone. it can verge into pain. But when we're in those higher frequencies, it's just noticing when something doesn't quite feel comfortable, sitting with it, allowing for it to expand and become part of us. With Taurus, there's often an emphasis on what is comfortable, what feels familiar, what feels delicious. So, with that Taurus energy sitting across from the sun, there could be a question here around where have you located your comfort outside of yourself? And perhaps even wondering where have you allowed yourself to become so intensely internally focused that you've forgotten that you're allowed to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. So, this is really a wonderful time to be with your body. It's a great time to get a massage. It's a great time to do yoga. It's a great time to have a nice meal. It's a great time to go to a concert. It's a great time for that sensory stimulation that really reminds you that you can enjoy the physical environment that is around you, that it can be there to hold you and support you as you go through your own internal alchemical process. Then on November 6th, we see Venus coming into Scorpio. And Venus, again, being a signifier for relationships, how we relate to other people, and also how we relate to ourselves. It also talks a lot about values. So as Venus comes into Scorpio, it's bringing in some of those questions here around what do we value about ourselves? What do we value about this particular incarnation we sit in? And how do we treat ourselves? How do we treat ourselves, and how do we treat other people? What motivations do we hold? Are we looking to connect through other people, connect with other people through love, through affection, through intimacy? Or are we looking to connect with other people through maybe some of those more frayed Scorpio experiences? Are we connecting with other people through jealousy or through envy, through coveting? Or are we connecting with them through vengeance? I certainly hope not. But Venus in Scorpio can certainly raise up those questions as it's looking to really create a deeper intimacy and a stronger bond that exists between us. So when I think about working with Venus and Scorpio, I really think about sitting in a place of emotional integrity, noticing what the emotions are that sit within you as you connect with other people, even as you connect with yourself. And again, being willing to go below them. If you feel jealousy, jealousy is a wonderful signal that you're celebrating somebody else. Look at how wonderful that person is. Look at what they have. So can you move below that jealousy into this place of deeper emotional intimacy and shared appreciation? And then on November 7th, I want to highlight this here as what we would call a solar cross quarter point. This cross quarter point is that midway point between the equinox we had when the sun entered Libra and the solstice we'll have when the sun enters Capricorn. So here in the northern hemisphere, that's midway through fall. In the southern hemisphere, this is midway through spring. And this is marked, at least here in the northern hemisphere, with Halloween, with All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day, Samhain. These are all cross quarter point celebrations. From a solar perspective, this happens at the sun's midway point through Scorpio. And again, this is on November 7th. So this represents a shift in the energy as we're moving into, in the northern hemisphere, the darkest eighth of the year. And that's really a time of drawing our energy back in as winter is approaching. It's a time of reintegration. It's a time of deep release. It's a time of deep rest in many ways. And it's also a time of tremendous visionary wisdom. We've had this whole journey around the year, and now we're coming back to that point where we started. So, as we draw in our energy from this year and we're drawing it back into ourselves in this time of deep reflection, we're also starting to understand what awaits us in the next year. And if we look at this down in the southern hemisphere, this would be the part of the year that's just approaching the brightest point. So this would be really a time of questioning, a time of mastery, a time of stepping into greater light. There has been an experience of creation. We've been moving towards the light, and now we're in this process of refining and we're figuring out, wow, what about this is really working for me? What about this feels really good? I've done a lot and I'm feeling really good about this, and I know that there's more that can be done. I'm editing things. It's like if you think about you're looking through your manifestation and you're thinking, all right, like I've got the basic structure and this is in place, and now I'm getting to start to play with some of those finer elements. If you imagine it's a house, like, ooh, I can swap out that doorknob, or I can change that paint color, or I can move this around. So it's a great time to get input. It's a great time to ask for feedback. Again, it is a really wonderful time for questioning and also for inviting masters in. If you think about, well, what paint color am I going to choose? You might be looking at somebody who's a specialist in paint colors. So it's a wonderful time to invite in outside expertise as you're really approaching that point of fullness at the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. So then the day after this cross quarter point, we move to November 8th when the sun enters into a trine with the north node in Pisces and also a sextile with the south node in Virgo. And I highlight this as again, I often see these links to the nodal points. Nodal points are entries in and exits out. So I often see these nodal points again as PowerPoints when we might think about manifesting or creating things in the physical world, the physical space, because we are connected to that access of entry and exit into the world. And here with that trine to the north node, there is maybe a natural harmony that things that you are aligned with may be starting to come in. You may start to notice on that day in particular, if you send out an intention, perhaps it's met with greater receptivity. So that's a really nice time to tune into that energy, that faded energy, that real sense of what does my soul want next and how can I draw it in. Also, with that sextile to the south node, there is that opportunity to release that moves alongside that. And that's going to speed things up for you if you're welcoming in a new experience and you're also noticing where there is resistance to it at the same time. And you're taking that extra step. Okay, I know that 75% of me is really excited about this new project, and 25% of me maybe doesn't feel so hot on it. So, yes, I'm going to send out this clear intention for this project for what I want to invite in. And also at that same time, I'm going to notice any resistance that sits within me, and I'm just going to ask for it to be released. I'm going to take whatever steps I need to release that. So, again, that's a nice energy activation point. And then we'll look to November 12th when we have the sun squaring the moon in Leo for the third quarter moon. So, this is the moon winding down that lunar cycle. And here it's perhaps asking us questions around where we have been performing in ways that are out of alignment with how we really feel and with who we really are and with our truth. Sometimes with Leo, that can be energy that we embrace. And that third quarter moon is asking for us to release, to let go of things that are out of alignment that no longer serve us. So, really, here focusing again on your own emotional integrity, what feels right to you, what you know to be true at the bottom of your gut, at the root of you, and noticing where are you acting? Where are you performing in ways to, I guess, maybe even gather attention or to draw people to you that isn't actually feeling accurate? That's not feeling in integrity with what you have to say. So it's a good point to really come back into, again, that beautiful sense of stillness about who you are and to anchor yourself and ground yourself in that before you start speaking, before you take the stage, before you present a specific version or identity of yourself. It's asking for that loosening of identity that really allows for that feeling of truth to come within you. And that's so important because truth isn't something that's static. Truth is something that is ever present, but it's also something that's ever evolving. The truth about who I am now is not the same truth that I had about myself a year ago or even a day ago. Things are always shifting. So, really remembering that truth isn't a static picture on the wall. It's like a moving picture that's just guiding you ever more into yourself. So, where do you have notions of identity that prevent you from following that path, from moving further into the expanding truth of who you are? And then I love this. On November 17th, we have the sun coming into what we would call a grand water trine. So it will be in a harmonious trine with Jupiter in Cancer and also with Saturn in Pisces. Saturn's also sitting there with Neptune, so that Neptune energy is going to be close as well. I'll mention that briefly here. I just want to focus primarily on Jupiter and Saturn. So with this grand water trine, we see Saturn that's offering us its skill to be able to structure the flow. That's what I think about really with Saturn and Pisces is there is this wonderful ability to provide physical material structures around this endless universe. And that is what we're doing in every moment. We are creating our reality from a myriad, from infinite possibilities that sit around us. We're creating it into being. And we also have Jupiter sitting in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer wanting to offer us this nurturing, expansive growth. And with the sun sitting here in Scorpio, again, there's that invitation into our deep inner stillness where we find that motivation to reveal the truth. So, where can I be creating structures from the flow that allow for me to nurture and grow and sit in alignment with my deeper truth? This is a wonderful inquiry. And this is such a powerful energy to work with here. So, again, from this solar perspective here in Scorpio, really having that sense of where you shine brightest, where you are at your most brilliant, and noticing that it's possible to experience that in a very real way at all times in your life. That in every environment you walk into, in every environment that you create, every environment that you print into existence, you are printing it from infinity. You are doing so with a mindset to grow, to expand, that you are being nurtured, you are being held by the universe around you. And your only job is to come into the stillness of who you are so you stop resisting it. So you can just let that flow. And especially with that Neptune aspect here, I often find whenever I'm talking about aspects with Neptune that even as I discuss them, it feels like the language I'm using is a little bit more transcendent. And I feel that here too, that I start talking in this higher octave. And Neptune again adds a dreamy quality to this. And with Neptune and Saturn sitting there together, that again really has that feeling of how we are structuring or drawing our particular reality, our experience of our lives out from this expansive cosmic field of infinity. So, again, the invitation here from that solar perspective is going into deep stillness, checking that your motivation is in line with your integrity. And I'm also getting some insight here that around that time, working with your solar plexus, really sending out the vibration of your truth, of your deepest knowing into the universe around you. Of course, the secret about our energy is that there are no secrets. We're broadcasting everything all of the time. But when you really come into that own deeper knowing, those secrets that perhaps you've been keeping from the outside world because you weren't sure whether it was possible, you didn't know if this dream could really come to pass, this is really a day to sit with those, to put them in your solar plexus, and just to imagine radiating them out into the world. Whenever we have Jupiter and Saturn coming together, it has this wonderful mix of expansion and this almost this feeling of concentration that Saturn offers. Jupiter wants to grow and Saturn can want to contract. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Contraction, that's how we're born. Contraction is also how we come into physical form when we move into the density of our physical experience. So with Jupiter and Saturn sitting there together, it's such a wonderful, I guess, a wonderful energy to work with when we want to experience changes in our physical environment, in our material circumstances. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then I want to note too, on November 19th, we have Mercury coming back into Scorpio retrograde. And then there's a fairly extraordinary event on November 20th when we have a new moon. So the moon coming back to see the sun in Scorpio, and it's during what we call a Mercury kazimi. So this is when Mercury is passing through the heart of the sun. And Mercury passing through the heart of the sun, a few things I think about with this Mercury kazimi. For one thing, a kazimi is an intense purification process. A planet is passing through the fires of the sun, so it's shedding all of the density that it's perhaps picked up as it's been moving. It's reorienting itself. It's being purified. It also is like the planet that sits with the sun becomes divine in some way. It shines with the light of the sun. So I often find that during those kazimi points, there is this feeling of like getting downloads, we might say. In my mind, I don't know that anything is really being downloaded into us. It feels to me more like it's being revealed from inside of us, that something is being lit up in some way. So whenever there's a kazimi, especially a Mercury kazimi, I always encourage people to pause, to have some stillness, maybe to journal, or if you like to leave yourself a voice note, to leave yourself a voice note, or to just go into total stillness and just allow yourself to receive, especially with this Mercury retrograde, kazimi. Retrograde really being a time where we are much more open to receiving and we're rewiring and repatterning ourselves. And with that new moon point happening at this same place, that new moon is such a wonderful point of potential, really being aware of the infinite potential that surrounds us. It is the moon at its darkest, it is the moon in the void. For me, the new moon is not a time to set clear intentions or goals, it's a time to be with possibility. So, here, being with this, it really feels like this wonderfully expansive possibility and maybe even being present with the possibilities that are there for you on an individual level as you embrace your truth. Again, with that Sun Mercury combination, there is something here around speaking your truth to yourself. So, could you take that time and actually be honest with yourself about who you are, be honest with yourself about what you want, and let that be the imprint that you take forward for the rest of that lunar cycle as the moon will continue to move around the zodiac? So, again, it feels like a wonderful time to really sit with yourself, to digest, to digest who you are, to digest what your experience has been, to digest all of the possibilities, to allow for them, and to move more into your own internal truth. And then as we look at November 21st, and this is just before the sun leaves Scorpio on November 22nd, we'll have the sun in a trine with Neptune. And again, that's drawing in that wonderful, dreamy, imaginative quality. So this is a great time to look for synchronicities, to feel like you're being guided by music, by poetry, by art. It's a wonderfully creative aspect. And again, it really does invite us into this higher or more transcendent connection. So there's so much here for me at the end of the month around being aware of what is possible. And we'll be tuning into these energies more as the month progresses. And if you're watching this before October 24th, I want to invite you to join me for a very special free online and live Scorpio retreat at 8 p.m. London time. I'll put the link down below. I also encourage you to follow my weekly forecast where I write on Substack. And this month, Scorpio month, my birth month, I'm also celebrating my birthday and I'm celebrating the relaunch of my website by offering some special half price celebration consultations. So if you'd like to pick one of those up, I'll put the link down below. Thank you so much for joining me and sending you blessings and love.